Hey everyone, so today we're going to continue thinking about the developmental unit by looking at the topic of empathy and theory of mind, something we've covered sort of tangentially throughout the course because it's come up in a lot of different studies, but something we're going to tackle more directly today. So empathy is the ability to understand and experience or share the feelings of others. And a key aspect of empathy is theory of mind, which is why we sort of teach them together. And this is the understanding that other people have different feelings and experiences from ourselves. And some psychologists argue that there's an actual biological underpinning to empathy, which are called mirror neurons, something we've sort of talked about a little bit, but we'll get into more today. Now, in terms of empathy, there is a difference because we do sometimes use these interchangeably between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, but empathy is actually the ability to understand their feelings. Right? So you're not just feeling sorry for someone when using empathy, you're actually having an ability to see things from their, not only from their point of view, but to understand and experience or share those feelings. And empathy has been found to occur globally and cross-culturally. You don't even have to understand the language of someone else to understand emotions like happy, sad, angry, right? You can sort of tell those things because in a lot of ways they are a little bit more universal. And these are often observed through nonverbal communication. Um, in terms of emotion, this is expressed in facial expressions in the same ways often across the world, like a smile would show happiness potentially. Um, and so this sort of empathy can happen cross-culturally. Now, in terms of the biological basis for empathy, again, this is just a theory to this point. And even though they found production of mirror neurons, they're still finding a lot more about what they do, how they're connected to empathy, is there a biological basis for empathy? All of these sorts of questions are still there. But we're going to go under the assumption of the shared manifold hypothesis. And in this, it says that mirror neurons are specific neurons which are activated in the brain of someone observing someone else, and then they fire in a way that mimics the actions of the person being observed. So for instance, if someone is watching someone else put on socks, the mirror neurons of the observer will fire in a way that indicates that they are actually completing the action, but it's a somewhat weaker form. To understand the thoughts and emotions of others, then, it is argued that it is done using nonverbal communication, right? And so someone smiles at you, it produces something within you, which then changes your behaviors potentially and allows you to understand where they are coming from or understanding the feelings of someone else. And mirror neurons really take the observation beyond what is mere understanding of another's thoughts or feelings to where you are actually experiencing those emotions. That leads us into the first study here, and that's KAPLAN and IACOBINI from 2006. And they wanted to study the activation of mirror neurons. So this was a brain scan study. They used an fMRI. They asked participants to watch video clips of people cleaning up cups, drinking from cups using different types of grips on the cup. And the grips were designed to be appropriate for the action. So drinking hot tea would cause the person to change grips to using the handle instead of the actual mug. And then the participants were only asked to watch the clips and pay full attention while they were in the fMRI scanner. And then they completed an empathy questionnaire. So one of the sample questions is below. When I watch a good movie, I can easily put myself in the place of the leading character. I can understand their emotions. So the results were that they found that there was a correlation between the score on the empathy questionnaire and the activity level of the mirror neurons when they were watching the cup. And this was especially true when they were looking at someone who's picking up a hot cup with their hands around the cup. They could almost experience their pain, and their brain was sort of working to say, ouch, that hurts, in the same way that it would for the person who is actually picking up the cup. And so there is possibly a connection between mirror neurons activation and potentially emotional or painful occurrences. And so this is a study that does support the role of mirror neurons in empathy development. The other study we're going to look at with empathy is from BOWLBY. And we talked about BOWLBY with attachment and a few other things. But the aim was to test the maternal deprivation hypothesis by looking at delinquent populations. And so BOWLBY interviewed 44 different juvenile delinquents, been caught stealing from a psychiatric facility, and then 44 controls who were also at the facility but who had not stolen. And BOWLBY sort of acted as both the researcher and the psychiatrist in this case. He interviewed the juveniles first to ascertain their personalities, diagnosed affectionless psychopathy, or the absence of affection or empathy. That's where empathy comes in. And then established whether they felt a lack of guilt or shame at their actions, and that informed the diagnosis. The families were then interviewed to determine whether the thieves had prolonged early separations from their primary caregiver in the first 2 years of life. So of the 14 thieves that were diagnosed as affectionless psychopaths, 12 had prolonged separation from their primary caregivers. And then only 5 of the thieves not diagnosed with affectionless psychopathy were separated for 6+ months before the age of 2. And how does this connect to empathy, you might ask? Well, in the case of psychopathy, it is the absence of empathy for other people, right? And so in the case of BOWLBY, he sort of shows that trauma and deprivation from your mother figure, especially in the first couple of years of life, may permanently or at least temporarily affect the amount of empathy that one has. And so this may be developed socioculturally in the first few years of life as well. So in terms of empathy research, a few different things can be said. And the first is on mirror neurons. Most of it has been done on animals, right? And so this is problematic, as we've talked about this year, in talking about a higher order cognitive skill like empathy. Would ours work in the same way? And a greater body of evidence is needed on human populations, over and above KAPLAN and IACOBINI. It's also argued that stating that the mirror neuron system underlies all experiences of empathy may be incorrect. They cannot easily explain how empathy can be felt when you cannot see the person, right? So it mostly talks about non-verbal communication, but verbal cues are not covered as of yet, or have not been found to have a connection as of yet. The shared manifold hypothesis also might be flawed in the emphasis of mirror neurons being necessary for the development of empathy. There have been studies on Mobius syndrome, which is a type of paralysis where the individual cannot express emotion on their face, but researchers found that individuals were still able to recognize emotion through the mirror neuron system. In terms of theory of mind, this is something we've talked about quite a bit, but this is understanding that other people have different feelings and perspectives from you. And this is a key component to the development of empathy in cognitive development. It's the ability to actually put oneself in another's shoes. And so from birth, children often have egocentric thinking where they think more about themselves, right? And we only experience the world through our own experiences. Such thinking, though, starts to go away as theory of mind replaces it around the age of 4. And you notice how I said the age of 4. This is different from what we talked about with Piaget, who said that it starts at about 7. And so children start to realize that other people have a mind too. That is a feeling and thinking different to their mind. And this is usually investigated by presenting children with a false belief task like the Piaget's 3 mountain test, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Children are developing theory of mind again around the age of 4, so they often fail the task, while at 6 years old, they usually pass the task. And so the development of theory of mind also allows us to manipulate and deceive others by hiding one's intentions and emotions. And this ends up occurring at about the age of 3. So there are negative effects of theory of mind. It's also possible that there is an earlier developmental version called shared attention mechanism in 9 to 18 months. And this has been found through research. It still needs more research done on it, but it allows two people to realize that they are witnessing the same thing. So whether you are watching something on TV and you realize that the person next to you is also watching TV and seeing the same thing as you. And the last study we're going to talk about today is Piaget and INHELDER, and this is from 1956. This is to see whether children who are less than 7 years old are able to see the model of a mountain scene from their own viewpoint only, showing that they possibly lack theory of mind. And so children 4 to 8 were presented with these 3 papier-mâché mountains. They were shown 10 pictures of different views of the model and asked to pick out the picture that matched of a doll that was sitting across the table from them. And so 4-year-olds often chose the picture that matched their own view, 6-year-olds showed some understanding of other viewpoints, and 7 to 8-year-olds consistently had developed theory of mind. And so the conclusion from this were that 4-year-olds were unaware that there are viewpoints other than their own, and children under 7 are subject to egocentric illusion. But as we saw with Bork, there may be limitations to this study. Because Bork has shown that children as young as 4 were choosing the perspective of someone else, showing theory of mind. So, like I said, in evaluating theory of mind, there's a lot of disagreement over whether theory of mind development at the age of 4 or more gradually from 2 years of age and up. The language of false belief tasks may also be too complex, and that's why they may fail to show theory of mind skills. And so the validity of tests is taken into question. And then since theory of mind may be able to be taught, there also may be evidence that development is environmentally driven. Theory of mind may not be an innate ability. And so an appropriate environment could drive the development of this particular skill. All right, if you have any questions on empathy and theory of mind, please come find me. I hope you all have a great day.